just waiting till you've all got a copy of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that right, Brian?
The tad, but...
Will you turn that down, please?
We'll just back it off a bit. Excuse me, just jump out.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Thank you. Well, that's better. Thank you. Okay. You've all got the release? Yep.
It's not great.
You guys are off to go?
Trav, what do you reckon? What's wrong? Are you good to go? Yeah.
Yep. Just got one more camera to get in place. We can wait for you. You're right? No worries. Sure, fine. Okay, thanks so much for being here today for some very significant announcements in relation to the government, the ministry and our state. Let me begin, of course, by saying that I'm very sad to have been advised and to announce the farewell of a number of my close friends and colleagues, both from the Cabinet, and they've indicated they'll not be recontesting at the election in November. Martin Foley, Lisa Neville, Martin Pakula and Richard Wynne are not only great friends, but people who have devoted so much of their working life to making our state fairer and stronger. People of principle, great character, hard work, people who can be so proud of all that they have been part of, all that they've driven and led. But when the time is right, when you know, then this is the right decision to make in the interests of not just the government, but in the interests of our state. I've had more to say about each of those colleagues and friends in statements that I've issued, and I direct you to those. It's very difficult to do justice to their contribution from this podium, but I thank them for the people they are, for the politicians they are, and for the reform and change that they have driven and the key role that they've played in our government and in our state. Each of them can be very proud. Now I want to speak about the Deputy Premier, James Merlino, who's here with us in a little more detail. James and I came into the Parliament at the same time. James is not only a trusted colleague, but a dear friend. No Premier could ask for a better deputy than James Merlino. He's a person of courage and conviction. He's defined not just by his work, and I'll come to that in a moment, but he's defined by his character, his decency, his hard work, his determination to stand up for his local community and for everybody across our community who needs a champion. In each of the portfolio areas that he's been honoured to serve in, he has brought that sense of compassion, that sense of urgency, that effectiveness to bear. When we came to government, our school system was in many respects on its knees. James has played such a massive part in building the education state. More recently, James has, of course, taken on responsibility for the implementation of Australia's first and only Royal Commission into mental health, acknowledging, as I do, that that system is broken and that we need to do more and that we need to do better. James leaves the ministry and will leave the Parliament knowing, just yesterday, introducing the most profound rewrite of the Mental Health Act in the history of our state, leading our nation. Work has begun on 90% of the recommendations of the Royal Commission. James can be very proud of that work as well. That will change lives, it will save lives. On a very personal note, I will never be able to repay James for his loyalty, for his friendship, for his care and comfort to me. No Premier could ever have had a better deputy, and I don't believe Victoria could have had a better acting Premier than we had for an extended period last year. To not doubt for one moment that the government, the Cabinet and the state was in the safest of hands allowed me and my family to deal with almost a life-changing injury. Less than a millimetre would have been a life-changing injury. It allowed me to focus on those things that are obviously important at a very personal level, and I'll never be able to thank James and his family for having stepped up the way that they did. He's an outstanding person, a great Victorian. He has been an outstanding Deputy Premier, and whilst I'm saddened by his decision, I understand And if you look at, I think, almost the last line of his statement today, where he indicates that his kids, 3 beautiful kids, are super excited that he's not going to be in politics anymore, I think that says it all. When it's right, it's right. Now, because of these changes, it has been necessary for me to make a number of appointments and to appoint new coordinating ministers, to essentially appoint a new leadership team across our government. There is great depth in our cabinet. There is great depth in our caucus. And I'm very pleased to be able to announce the following arrangements, just to give you a complete list. Some are changes, some are not. Treasurer Tim Pallas will remain as the Coordinating Minister for the Department of Treasury and Finance. Jacinta Allen remains the Coordinating Minister for the Department of Transport. The Attorney General, Jacqueline Symes, remains the Coordinating Minister for the Department of Justice and Community Safety. I'm very pleased to be able to announce that Ben Carroll will step up to become the Coordinating Minister for the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions. Similarly, Lily D'Ambrosio, our outstanding Energy Minister, will become the Coordinating Minister for the Department of Environment, Land, Planning and Water. Natalie Hutchins will become and assume the role of Coordinating Minister for the Department of Education and Training. Danny Pearson, the Assistant Treasurer, will take on responsibilities as the Coordinating Minister for the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing. And Mary Ann Thomas will become the Coordinating Minister for the Department of Health and for the Department of Health. That means that, like the Cabinet, the government's leadership team is now more than half women. That's critically important to me. We have made some profound changes to make sure that women are safe in our state, that women are represented across government boards, our courts and tribunals, and the government is so much better for making sure that 50% of the community are at least 50% of our ranks. I'm very, very pleased to reflect on these new coordinating ministers. It's a team of great talent, great depth, real passion, real purpose. They will bring that sense of energy and commitment that we've seen from those who are moving on. And we know there's a lot to do. We know that we've got to continue working hard every day to make our state fairer and stronger. We've got to keep working hard every day to deliver on our commitments to the Victorian community. And we have to work very hard as well to put a positive and optimistic plan to the community at the end of this year. And then it will be their choice whether we as a state keep building hospitals and schools, road and rail, keep creating jobs, keep our state safe by trusting science and being led by medical advice, or whether we go a different way of cuts and closures and playing political games all the time. That'll be a choice, though, not for me. That's a choice for the good people of our state. Our job is to govern and work hard every day, get things done. We will do that. And also make sure that we put that positive and optimistic plan to the community. We'll do that as well. Portfolio arrangements will be announced in due course. There will be a caucus meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. And I'll make more detailed portfolio announcements, the full balance of portfolios, once that caucus meeting has been conducted. And it's my expectation that very early next week the full ministry will visit Government House where there will be a swearing-in ceremony, and we'll provide you, of course, with all of those details in due course. I now might ask the outgoing Deputy Premier, the Deputy Premier for the next few days, my friend and just an outstanding colleague and an outstanding person, to add to my comments. James.
Thanks very much, Dan, and it's good to be here for the last time. This is a hard day. It's a sad day for me personally, but also it's an exciting time in my life and for my family. Can I thank firstly my great friend and colleague Dan. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege to be your deputy for the last 10.5 years, and alongside Jacinta at the front table. I said in my statement, the Premier, someone who has the biggest and the boldest ideas to make Victoria a better place, but the energy, the grit, the determination to actually get it done. I've never seen anything like it. An extraordinary leader, a great friend, a beautiful family. I'll get emotional if I speak too long, but it's been an absolute honour to work alongside Dan, and I'll be going 100 miles an hour to make sure that we get Andrews' government re-elected at the election in November. But to Dan, to Kath, the kids, to all of my colleagues, thank you. It's been an honour to work with you. Time comes for everyone, and in politics, sometimes that's beyond your control. You lose pre-selection, you lose your seat at the election. For some lucky ones, and I consider myself incredibly lucky, we get to call time in our career, and there's never a right time. Like this is hard. It's hard to leave my beloved portfolios of education and mental health. It's hard to do it, but there does come a time for everyone. You know, for my friend Wade Noonan, he had 10 years in the Parliament. He achieved a lot, and that was it for him. For me, it's 20 years. For others, they've got more energy, more ideas. I know I can go 100 miles an hour, 100% through to November, but I also know deep in my heart that I couldn't commit to another 4 years. And the seat of Monbulk will always be a marginal seat. I took it off the Liberal Party in 2002 with the awesome volunteers in Monbulk, and we've held on to it ever since. But I didn't want to have a by-election in the seat of Monbulk, and I know I didn't have 4 years in me to continue as a Member of Parliament. For me also, I know this is the right thing to do for my government that I've been a part of, the Andrews Labor government, for the last almost 8 years. Renewal is the right thing to do. It is hard for those of us that are leaving, but it is also a great thing for the government and for the state of Victoria. And behind me are senior ministers of incredible talent and capacity. I know that the new ministers that will be supported by caucus over coming days, there is immense talent and capacity within the team, and I know that this is the best thing for the government. You need to renew. 20 years is a long time. 16 years on the front bench, either in opposition or in cabinet, and 12 years as a minister. It's been an incredible privilege and an honour. I want to finish by paying tribute to all our educators in the state of Victoria, the principals, the teachers, the support staff, the students and the parents. It was my dream to be Education Minister, and it has been a joy every single day. And secondly, to the brilliant, dedicated, compassionate mental health workers. You've been the rock of our mental health system, doing your absolute best in a system that is broken, and we are rebuilding it together. Our mental health workforce, all our clinicians, our lived experienced community, we are rebuilding it together, and we've made a really, really strong start. So thank you very much. Thank you to the media. There are times I won't miss you and times I will miss you, but thank you for the work that you do. I will still be very, very heavily involved in the campaign to November the 26th, so I'm sure I'll see you out on the hustings and doing my very best to support my colleagues and the ability for us to finish the job that we started in health, in education, in mental health, and creating thousands and thousands of jobs. Congratulations to the new coordinating ministers and to my colleagues who will be ministers very shortly once caucus meets. Thanks again to Dan, a wonderful, wonderful friend, a great Premier, and a dear colleague. Thanks very much, everyone.
Do you know who you would like to replace you as Deputy Premier?
Well, that will be up to caucus, but I'll hand back to the Premier to answer any questions.
Mark, I can confirm that the new leadership team has met this morning, and we will together make a recommendation to our colleagues at tomorrow morning's caucus meeting that Jacinta Allen be elected as the Deputy Premier. That is a matter for caucus, but this new leadership team takes its responsibilities very seriously, and it's only appropriate that if we have a view shared by all of us, that we should share that with our colleagues. But that is a matter for caucus, and caucus will meet tomorrow to elect 5 new ministers and to deal with those issues also.
Given that that breaks with the tradition of having a deputy from the right, given that you're from the left, are you expecting any opposition from caucus to that?
Well, that is a matter for caucus, but I'll point out to you, Rachel, that I don't think it's right to talk about that sort of tradition. My recollection is that whilst, for instance, Rob Hulls did a very good impersonation of someone from the left, he was not from the left. Whilst John Thwaites was a particularly progressive member of that government, he was not a member of the left. So let's not get into these sorts of games. I'm very confident, just as my senior leadership team colleagues are very confident, that the caucus will make the right decision. And what we know is that what we know. Oh, sorry, Treasurer, just one sec. What we know. Actually, no. I defer to. Well, you've all been giving him grief about how old he is, so I defer to my most senior colleague.
I was going to make that quip. I feel like you've robbed me of my opportunity now. As your most senior minister, and by that I mean your oldest, it really befalls to me as the senior minister for the right to make it very clear that I am a very strong supporter of Jacinta Allen to be the Deputy Premier. And I say that because I've had the opportunity to work with her for over 2 decades now. She's a passionate advocate in the Parliament for her community. She will be a great demonstration, I believe, of this government's renewal, but also its commitment. So from my perspective, I'll certainly be recommending to the right caucuses that they should be supporting Jacinta for the role.
Premier, in making this decision, are you trying to send a signal that from now Labor will pick the best person for the job instead of factional decisions, factional fights over these types of positions?
Simon, I'm more often than not criticised for doing exactly that. We've always put the best team forward. Let me make another point. You know, this is often talked about as the Andrews Labor government. None of what we have achieved and will achieve in the future with the support of the great people of our great state, which we don't take for granted. That's something to be earned again at the end of this year. I've never taken the community for granted. Nothing that we have achieved or may achieve in the future is the product of any one person. I am so honoured and so privileged to be the leader of a team that has such great depth, such great talent, such great energy and optimism for the future, big and bold ideas. I've always said that we need the best, and I've always made it clear that I want at least half the cabinet to be women. And I think that's not always been popular, but it's the right thing to do. And to think now that the new leadership team, the most senior ministers in the government, coordinating ministers, just like the cabinet, more than half that group are women, I think that's Victoria leading the way again.
How long has this plan been in the works? How long have you been working
Well,
on this, or when did James come to you?
Sure. Well, you can ask James these matters, but I'll make it very clear to you that I've had discussions with a number of colleagues, and I want to make it clear to you and to all Victorians that none of the colleagues that have made these announcements have come to these decisions easily or lightly. They've thought about these things very carefully. They have, been a bit undecided at times, and then because it's not an easy decision to make. This decision is very, very challenging. But they've come to those decisions, and I respect the fact that it has not been easy. It shows just how passionate they are about Victoria. It shows just how committed they are to working hard for Victorians. We talk about left, right and all this sort of stuff. That's not what it's about. It's about Victorians. It's about hard-working Victorians across the state, for those who need a Labor government to get the life opportunities that they're entitled to those who need a government that gets things done so that they can be part of a prosperous state. That's what drives us, and the fact that my colleagues have had to think long and hard about this, it speaks to their character, Simon. It speaks to the fact that they know that it is a great privilege to be in government. something we've never taken for granted, nor will we ever take for granted. But at the same time though, when you're a passionate Victorian and you're privileged enough to serve in a position such as a minister or indeed the Deputy Premier, and you've been extremely hard-working and effective to boot, then you get the right to make your own decision and your own announcement about what your future holds. I don't think that's too much to ask, and today, obviously, those announcements have been made, and we've made very quick decisions and the right decisions about who replaces those coordinating ministers, and then the caucus will give us a full team sheet. I'll make allocations of portfolios in more detail, and we'll share those with you and sit with you again and answer lots of questions about those things, and that'll happen in the not too distant future.
Can I ask this one?
Let's go over to here, Simone.
Last time you sent a signal on who you wanted to replace Jenny McCarthy in the upper house, Labor's faction essentially defied you and chose someone else. Is this comment because of death or just irrelevant?
Well, as I indicated just a moment ago, the new leadership team has met and will make a recommendation to caucus. That's all of us here as coordinating ministers will make a recommendation to caucus that Jacinta be elected tomorrow as the Deputy Premier. That'll be a matter for caucus. I'm not aware of anyone else being a candidate for that office, but I won't go any further than that because I don't want to preempt that process. But when the leadership team's got a view and it's unanimously held, then the right thing to do is to share that with colleagues. As for the appointment of Sheena Watt, which you're referring to, this week of all weeks, Sheena Watt can be very, very proud that she's part of a government that isn't just talking about truth and justice and treaty, but is delivering that. And Sheena's played a key part in that, along with Gab Williams, along with Nat Hutchins before her, along with Richard Wynne before Nat, Gavin Jennings. You know, we've had a long, long history of not just talking about these issues, but getting on and delivering. So Sheena's outstanding. She's doing a great job. And I'd like to think that having made it very clear to my colleagues that we needed to be equal to the moment, we needed to do something really significant and choose a First Nations person for that vacancy. It's exactly what we did.
Premier, to confirm, these new coordinating ministers will be taking on the portfolios of people that are resigning, so like Marianne Thomas taking on none?
Yes, Marianne will be. That's quite a simple one, and I wish I could give you the full sheet, but again, I don't have. Correct. We can keep going. We can keep going. However, it won't be. It's not one for one in that there's not everything. For instance, that Martin Bakula had will not necessarily be going to Ben. I will work through those issues, and I apologise that I can't give you a full list, but we do have a pretty quick caucus meeting. These announcements were only made this morning. We're going to have the caucus meeting tomorrow morning, and we will be able to give you a full accounting not long thereafter, once we have those 5 new ministers of who will be doing what, and then they will be sworn in potentially as early as Monday, certainly early next week.
Are you expecting a backlash? Are you named as coordinating ministers before the caucus have had their say on full cabinet?
No, coordinating ministers are determined by the Premier. It's a long-standing practice, so I'm very pleased to think that we've got such depth in our cabinet and in our caucus that we can have a fresh team with renewed energy, passion, and that absolute commitment to give Victorians a positive and optimistic choice, the alternative, the judgment that they have to make. It is their judgment, and of course, in every day between now and then, to work hard to deliver on our commitments, to work hard to deliver for every single Victorian.
The healthcare system is currently under a lot of strain. Are Victorians be worried about a change of a health minister during the time?
No, I want to take this opportunity, and I don't want to sort of speak at length about some colleagues and not others. I've paid special mention of the Deputy Premier, and I don't think that's a perfectly appropriate thing for me to do, I think. But I will, given your question, I will refer you to my statement in relation to Martin Foley. He's done an outstanding job. He's a person of such hard work and a real calmness about the way he goes about his business, and he's done us proud, and his leadership has saved lives, and I'm deeply grateful to him. But for his own reasons, and he's outlined those, I think, to you, it's the right time for him to move on. Marianne had the great privilege of serving as Parliamentary Secretary for Health. She then was the Cabinet Secretary of long standing, which means she's been at the Cabinet table and at the centre of government for a long time, and since leaving the role of Cabinet Secretary, she's been a Minister. She comes with a breadth of experience, a great ease with people, the ability to connect with people, great empathy, and I might say, I think, not just competence and qualification, but real wisdom. Mary Ann will be an outstanding Health Minister because she knows that at the centre of a good health system is strong health funding, not cuts and closures, but investment, working with your workforce, working with nurses and ambos and doctors, cooks and cleaners and ward clerks, the whole team. Mary Ann respects their work and values their work, and I'm very confident that she'll do an outstanding job.
Why were there so many denials throughout the week, though? We had at least 2 ministers say that they very much intended to run for their seats, and in saying that, they're saying that to the public. Is that deceptive?
No, it's appropriate that ministers, individuals, make their own announcements on their own terms. And you guys have got a job to do. We're here today. We're not leaving till we've answered all the questions that you want to ask us, which, as is my practice, not necessarily what happens at every press conference around the political landscape in our nation. I would also make the point that when you've worked hard and been, I think, a really effective member of a government that has got things done, when you've wrestled with this decision, when you've really thought deeply about it, then you do earn that right to make a decision and make an announcement at a time of your choosing. And I'm sure that the 4 other colleagues beyond James, they'll be available if you want to speak to them about different issues and to reflect on their service. They're of course going to be here for the rest of the parliamentary term, but it's not for me to make those announcements on behalf of other people. They can make those announcements, and these announcements have been made.
But Premier, can I ask you on Tuesday whether you can rule out any changes to the parliament team between now and November? You told me I was asking silly questions and that you're not the fortune teller.
Well, you were, Rachel, with the greatest of respect.
Either you had no idea what was going on in your own cabinet, or you were being disingenuous, which is...
But Rachel, you might well, I don't think you'd be right to form that conclusion, but, you could perhaps form that conclusion, regardless of what question you asked me or what answer I gave. At the end of the day, I answered your question. I stand by the answer, and to be honest, I'm not so much focused on the process of these things. I'm focused on thanking and congratulating those who've given so much, but assuring the Victorian community that it's them that we are focused on, and we will, through this outstanding leadership team and 5 new ministers that will come from a caucus with such depth of talent, we will have, by Monday, Tuesday at the latest, a fresh team on the field working as hard as we can every single day to honour the trust that's been placed in us, to get the job done, to get things built, keep people in work, to build hospitals and schools, road and rail, all of those things and so many more.
Just on to the answer that you gave to my question, I asked whether you expected James Molino and Lisa Neville to contest the November election, and you said yes. Did you genuinely believe that to be the case on Tuesday?
Rachel, it's not for me, with the greatest of respect, it is not for me to make announcements by answering your questions, fishing questions. That's all. What was the probative value of this? What turned in our state on this issue? There was gossip. You were motivated to ask me a question. You asked me the question. It's not for me to make announcements on behalf of colleagues, and therefore I did not. Therefore I did not.
The Victorian people with truthful answers, though, isn't it?
And if you want to write in tomorrow's column that that's not who I am, then do that. Like, it wouldn't be the first time. At the end of the day, I'm not going to make announcements for colleagues who, frankly, I think have earned the right to make their own announcements. Because the thing is this, you and I would often agree and then sometimes disagree, and we also always do it on a respectful basis, and that's very important. But this is not about you and me, Rachel. When it comes to an individual who's spent 20 years in this place, for instance, it's about them, yes, it's about their electorate, and these people are all, James and the others are staying on till the end of the term. But it's about their families as well. It's about their partners and their kids. It's about the fact that, we all decide to go into politics, and our families are kind of taken along for the ride. You know, they have to, whether they want to do it or not, they're part of it. So I think that all that's involved in these jobs means that people have that right to make their own announcements. That's all I'm saying. And if I'm to be criticised for that, well, fine, that's an important part of your job as well.
So you're
But I wasn't going.
allowing them to make it.
As I think I've done a few times now, Rachel, I'm inviting you to speculate, to have your own opinions, to write up whatever column you want to write. That's your job. You asked questions, I answered them because I didn't think it was appropriate for me to be essentially, with no demonstrable benefit to anybody, making announcements on behalf of colleagues. I think they've got the right to make those announcements.
It looks a bit shambolic having such a major change so few months from the election, doesn't it?
No.
To that point, just before we go to James, it's a very different looking cabinet to what you initially had once you were elected in 2018. Yep. You're speaking about it very positively in terms of renewal, but is there anything to suggest that losing such experience is a negative for you and your government?
No, because let me make this point to you. I came into the Parliament 20 years ago. I didn't come in as Premier. Like, for me to be where I am now, somebody else had to move on. Sometimes by choice, and in the case of Dennis Napthine, not by choice. It's always for this generation to give opportunities to the next generation. And that comes in lots of different forms. Whether it's getting an opportunity to be a chair of a parliamentary committee, whether it's getting a call from the Premier to become a parliamentary secretary, as I was honoured to do, only a few days after I was elected back in 2002, when Steve Bracks rang me and said, I want you to be the Parliamentary Secretary for Health. Or whether it's joining the Cabinet, being the Cabinet Secretary, as Mary Ann was. Or getting a call this morning and sitting down with me and being told that you would be a coordinating minister. All of these things are opportunities, and renewal, fresh legs, as they say, a new team, fresh team, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And particularly when you know that you've got such great depth, talent, amazing people who are ready on day one to do what's needed, and then of course get even better as time goes on.
Which MPs would you like to see in the Cabinet? I know it's a matter of caucus, but anyone that you'd like to recommend?
Good try. Yeah.
No names?
The Deputy Premier has answered the question for me.
Nice try too. When will that happen?
They'll be matters for the National Executive to deal with.
To see more female MPs or you may
I think my record is one of always wanting to see more female MPs. So you can take it as read. That we're very close. We're very close, I think, to really embedding more than half the caucus, not just more than half the cabinet, and now more than half the leadership group. So there'll be a great opportunity for us. And for instance, Lisa Neville is an outstanding member of the cabinet, dear friend, someone who, might I say, has put Victorians and the job she's had ahead of her health for a long time. And she's finally come to what for her has been, for many would have been an easy decision. For Lisa it's been a very hard decision. But she has made that decision to move on and put herself first for once. That speaks to the person she is. I won't go through all of her different achievements, but in my experience, toward the respect of Victorian Police members and their families is not easily earned. But I think she is genuinely respected across Police Command and the Police Force because she has been their champion. Now, in the interest of not leaving anybody out, I think I probably haven't said anything about Martin Pakula yet. Is that right? Someone's keeping note? Yeah, good. Look, all I can say is this. If you know Martin, you know that there's few people with more energy and more urgency than Martin. And perhaps the greatest compliment I can pay to him is that you can't have You can't be the major events capital of our nation unless you've got an outstanding major events minister. And just think, just recently, right up until yesterday, Martin's been working for the people of Victoria. Billy Joel, Foo Fighters, Formula One Grand Prix extended out. The list goes on and on and on. None of that happens without Martin, none of it. And I'll be forever grateful for his wisdom, his hard work, his energy, his absolute passion, and he can be very proud of all that he has achieved.
Both Martins both spoke about COVID and burnout over the last 2 years as being contributing factors that they're just simply exhausted. How much of a factor has that played into James's decision? I know Lisa's had her own battles, but is it not just them but yourself as well?
No Victorian has had an easy time in terms of COVID's been very challenging for every single Victorian, every Victorian. I'm not here to talk about me, I'm here to talk about and get on and do things for the people of Victoria. Before you ask the question, I didn't come back after last year when, I doubt that any of you would have found fault if I'd said, righto, I'm off to do something else. Probably would have said, okay, fair enough, he's had a pretty serious injury, nearly finished up in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. But that's not the decision that Kath and I made. I decided to get fit, to get well, to get back, to get this job done. And that's why I'm standing here now. That's the choice I've made. That's what I've been able to do. Not everybody is able to make that choice. And it takes a lot to have that kind of internal honesty to not, to make way for somebody else to come through. So these 5 colleagues, Richard Wynne, let's not forget Richard, and I issued a long statement that, took me a long time to write the statement about Richard because I've known him for literally 30 years. And he is a dear, dear friend. Let's not forget him. I know it was a time ago that he made his announcement, but let's not forget Richard today either and all that he has done. Talk about someone who lives their values. There's no greater example of that than Richard Wynne. And to him and his family, I know leaving the cabinet now is not easy. But each and every one of these 5 people have thought through not their own interests, but what's in the interests of their party, what's in the interest of their community, what's in the interest of their state. And they should be very proud of that. In some ways, the easy thing to do is to kind of, I'll push on. They've not made that decision. They've made the much harder decision, which is sometimes to walk away from the thing that you love, the thing that you, when it comes to them, particularly good at. But they've made that choice, and I'm grateful to them for it.
Why not those departing ministers here?
Well, they'll make themselves available to you if you want to talk to them.
Did you not want to visual reminder that you were losing so many people?
No. Well, if to extend that logic, then I would have been standing here on my own, wouldn't I? And I'm instead surrounded by an amazing team of capable people, and I'm really proud to say that just like my cabinet, our senior leadership team is now more than 50% women, and I think that's a fantastic thing, not just for Victoria, but it sends a message to our whole country that you can do this, and you're really silly if you don't.
Premier, can I just ask Mr. Moore?
We'll get to the Deputy Premier, because I reckon you might have more than 1 or 2 for him, so any more for me, and then maybe James can have a run up at it. Simon?
Months isn't a long time to know the new cabinet for the public. Are they going to be doing
Sure.
some more active engagement between now and November?
Every minister, with the greatest of respect to my friends in the 4th Estate, who you cover and how much publicity you give to people will be a matter for you. But they'll all be out working. They'll all be out working really, really hard, just like the people they replaced. They've been working really, really hard. Seriously, I was having conversations with Martin Pakula yesterday about major events. The Deputy Premier, James Merlino, yesterday, second read the most profound reform to mental health, the framework, the laws in our state that we've ever seen. They've been working hard. New coordinating ministers will be working hard, and new ministers chosen by caucus tomorrow morning, they'll be working hard too.
Since Carolyn was elected as Deputy Leader, who will be the Leader of the House?
I'll make arrangements about that, and I'll make announcements once I've done that.
And will the new ministers be sworn in on Monday?
I hope so. I don't want to be disrespectful to Government House. We need to confirm with them when exactly it works for Her Excellency, but certainly early in the week. If not Monday, then it would probably be Tuesday, Samaya.
So the
Well, this is
coordinating
meeting tomorrow.
Correct.
When will you publicly be making the
as soon as I can, and I need to work through. And I'm not prejudging who those people are, so it'll be a talented group of people because there's such depth there. But people will bring different life experience, different points of view and perspectives, different strengths. So I want the benefit of knowing who those 5 people are before I allocate portfolios, and then as soon as I can, I'll make announcements and no doubt appear to come along and answer questions for you. If not, I'll certainly be answering questions once we've got the full team chosen.
So just to be clear, the coordinating function, that doesn't need a swearing in?
Correct.
Can I just ask Mr. Molina?
All good for me? No more for me? All right. James, over to you.
James, when did you decide that now is the time to call time on your political career by the end of this year?
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking a lot about over a long period of time. In fact, you know, every 4 years, and I'm sure it's the case with all of my colleagues, every 4 years, you know, Megs and I would have a chat. Are we going again? Because you've got to do what's right for your family, most importantly. What do you want to achieve? So I've had that. I've had those thoughts and those discussions every step of the way through my career. But over the last 6 to 12 months, I've been thinking more and more about it. And someone wise once said to me, when you come into politics, think of how you want to leave politics. And that stuck with me. That was a comment that was made more than 20 years ago. I just knew in my heart, I don't have the fuel in the tank for another term. I've certainly got the fuel in the tank for the contest in November. So it's over the last 6 or 12 months.
Mr. Molina, you looked at one crucial detail, which is what's next. What are you planning to do after November?
Yeah, that's when I have my freak out moments because, you know, it's one big door is closing and I'll be opening a new door and have no idea what's on the other side, and that's a little bit exciting for someone who's been in the public eye really for more than half my life, 20 years in the state parliament and almost 6 as a local councillor in Yarra Ranges. More than half my life I've had a public role, so I'll continue to find ways to serve the public, but in a less obvious way than what I'm doing right now.
So it's unlikely to be a private sector role. You're possibly going to take advantage of the fact that there's a Labor government in Canberra and a Labor government here and a well-worn path from Parliament to government appointments?
Rachel, I have honestly not thought about what comes next, other than I'll be spending a lot more time with my kids, supporting Megan's career. You know, her career is every bit as important and valued as mine. So that's what I'll be focusing on in the short term. No, I can certainly rule that out.
James, you're leading. I mean, the Mental Health and Wellbeing Act isn't really going to come into effect until I think it's next year, and I know it's going to be a decade-long reform. But do you feel like you're leading too early in regard to that reform which you wanted to see? I know you spoke very personally about your cousin's experiences.
No, I don't think I'm leaving too early. I think the way I saw my job in the period that I've been Mental Health Minister is to deliver the momentum in the early years of this 10-year reform. If you don't get those early years right, we are not going to deliver the rebuilt mental health system that every Victorian wants to see. And there's 3 core foundations. Sustainable funding. We've put it in law. The other side have committed to cut $3.7 billion. The legislative framework, I was just so proud to deliver that bill this week. And then thirdly, and most importantly, the workforce. There is no reform if you don't have a pipeline of mental health professionals, and we've funded and delivered 2,500 over the next few years. So I feel I've done my job, but it's absolutely appropriate. I go back to what I said in my statement and earlier. Renewal is important. Renewal is a good thing. It's a good thing for the government. It's a good thing for the state of Victoria. And I know, because I know so well the capacity and the talent of my colleagues, I know the next mental health minister is going to be an outstanding mental health minister, because all of us are committed to mental health reform.
20 years is a long time in politics, and your statement alludes to all of the things that you missed out on over the years, particularly with your family. Can you sort of walk us through the mental impact that politics has taken on you and your family's life?
Yeah, I spoke from the heart in the statement in terms of the impact that politics has on all of our families. It has a disproportionate impact on our partners and on our kids, and it's in big and little ways. You know, it is the school productions that you might miss, or the sporting events you might miss, those milestones that you might miss. But it's also, and I know that Wade spoke about this when he retired from Parliament, it's also the times when you're there, but you're not really there, because you know you're dealing with all the pressures and the challenges that politics brings. So for all of those reasons, there's not one single reason why I've come to this decision, but for all of those reasons, now is the time for me. But I'm just so excited for the opportunities, because Dan is absolutely right. All of us come in as younger, inexperienced members of Parliament. We all rely on those opportunities in our careers. I've had my opportunities. It is now time for others to get that opportunity.
How do you feel about passing over to Ms. Ellen and, you know, essentially having a handover and a time to hand over properly? What will your advice be to Jacinta? She is elected.
Yep. I don't need to give JA any advice. She is a magnificent member of Parliament, magnificent minister, and a dear friend. One of the most enjoyable part of my career has been sitting at that front table for 10.5 years with Jacinta and with Daniel. JA will be an outstanding Deputy Premier, and she has my absolute full backing and support. The full backing and support of all of our senior ministers who are coordinating ministers, and I know that she'll get the support of caucus. It's up to caucus. We'll have that meeting tomorrow, but she'll be a brilliant Deputy Premier.
When did you tell your children, and what was their initial
Well, they've been sworn to secrecy for a little while, and they've done a pretty good job, I've got to say. But they're very, very excited. Although then I had to tell them this morning I've got a meeting at 10 a.m. on Saturday. Yeah, they're very excited.
We photographed you earlier this year with property in the patch with your alpacas. Is that where you're going to will you spend more time there in the next?
Yeah, I'll certainly spend some time. I'll probably plant a few more olive trees, take care of the alpacas, and most importantly, spend time with Megs and the kids.
Sorry.
Why are you the only retiring minister standing here? Where are the other three who have been out there?
Well, as Dan said, everyone's available today. We are really, I think, in what should be in a smaller way, acknowledging those who are leaving, including myself. This is about renewal, what is good for the government and for the state of Victoria. So I know, you know, my good friends Martin, Richard and Lisa, you know, we've spent, each of us spent moments together through this week reminiscing, and I know they'll be available to speak to the media.
You talked about the challenges of balancing work and family life. I know in Canberra, the Albanese says he's trying to make Parliament a more friendly place. Do you think there's more that can be done within Victoria in that respect?
Oh, look, I think we should always work on ways that we can make Parliament more family friendly. I know particularly through the leadership of Jacinta in the roles that she's had within the Parliament, not having those late night sittings has made a huge difference. It means, you know, I live an hour out of the city. I can get home and say goodnight to the kids most nights of a parliamentary session. So I think we've already made some great strides, but you know, if we can do more, that'd be a great thing too.
Is it too early to ask Jacinta about taking on the role?
Well, thanks, Santo. Yes, thanks, Santo, for asking. But I will acknowledge that there is a caucus process to go through, and that obviously will take place tomorrow. But I can say I'm really humbled and grateful for the support from my colleagues around me, and particularly thank the Premier also for his support to be contemplating the opportunity to take on the reins from an outstanding Deputy Premier in James Merlino. He has set a very high benchmark in terms of his leadership, his calmness, his unflappable approach to the role is an outstanding example to follow. I am humbled at having the opportunity, but the opportunity does need to go through that important caucus process. Well, as the Premier has indicated just earlier, I'll be remaining as a coordinating minister in the transport portfolio and remaining in those transport portfolios.
Do you think you can do that in other portfolios at the same time?
Oh, well, look, the portfolio allocations is always a matter for the Premier. And can I say, it's just an amazing opportunity to serve in any role in a Daniel Andrews-led cabinet. James has touched on this before. Daniel is such a man of such amazing energy and ideas and determination and passion to deliver fundamental and foundational reform for the state of Victoria. Any role in a Daniel Andrews cabinet is a fantastic role to have.
You could be the first female Premier since John Turner.
My ambition is to see the re-election of a third Daniel Andrews-led Labor government.
Would you like to be a Premier?
My ambition, as I said, is to see the re-election of an Andrews Labor government, because we've got tons to do, so much to do. You've just seen in the last couple of weeks, on top of everything else that the government is doing in mental health reform, education reform, supporting the health system, investing in important infrastructure in my own portfolio, we've added to that with the remarkable work that has been led by the Premier and the Deputy Premier and Minister Stitt in bringing about an opportunity to reform the childcare and kindergarten system that works for families. This is transformational work. It is work that takes many, many years and generations to deliver. We are a government that is determined to start this work and set the framework for the future.
When Richard retired and you were longest-serving MP in the Labor government, do you have fuel in the tank, and where does this stamina come from?
Well, reflecting a little bit on what James has mentioned, you know, it is important that we reflect that we have the fuel in the tank to stand up before the Victorian community and say we would like another 4 years to serve as either your Member of Parliament or to have the privilege to serve as a Minister. And yes, the answer is yes. I most certainly do. I get tremendous motivation from being the member for Bendigo East. That's, to be honest, the best job. Being the member for Bendigo East and serving the community I was born and grew up in is indeed the greatest privilege of all. That gives me tremendous motivation. What is also pretty motivating too is having young kids and seeing the opportunity to work in areas in the state government. State governments impact directly the lives of families in so many different and important ways. Being able to make a change in my kid's life is also really motivating.
Just one last question from the Premier, if that's okay.
Sure.
Is it your expectation that this cabinet to be swearing in on Monday or Tuesday, whenever it is, will be the cabinet post the election?
That's my expectation. Yes. Just before we...
Sorry, just one from James. It's a bit of a Dorothy. Sorry, I don't want to hold the picture of that, but just could you name one or two in education what you regard as your most significant achievements from your
well, what I know is that there's no victory lap in terms of reform. There's always the next challenge. There's, as Jacinta said, there's so much more to do. I'll honestly leave it up to others to judge my impact in education and mental health. It's been the joy of my professional career. I dreamed of becoming Education Minister, and I've loved every second of it. And it's up to others to judge. I couldn't.
Modesty and the integrity of this bloke means he can't do it. But I'll single out two things. One, I'll never forget the then Shadow Minister for Education coming to me and saying the government, the Liberal government, have cut the education maintenance allowance, a modest amount of money that goes to the poorest families in our state so that they can feed, clothe and educate their kids. We need to do something about this, he says to me. Anyway, we did the hard work, the policy work. We essentially reinstated that and expanded it. Breakfast clubs, lunch clubs, We've got literally hundreds of thousands of kids that we don't just educate them, we feed them every day. We support them with their uniforms. We make sure they can fit in. We make sure that their camps, excursions and sporting events are subsidised so that they can be part of the school community. That's just one example. None of that happens. None of it. In fact, quite the opposite happens. These programs are all cut, reinstated and built upon and made even better and fairer because of the sort of person James Milano is. And just finally, I would reflect on one of my proudest moments, and it's only because of the Deputy Premier and Education Minister. To be able to stand up on Budget Day, the Treasurer I know as well, to be able to stand up on Budget Day and say that we would complete a previously unannounced aim to upgrade not just some of our special schools, but to upgrade every single one of our special schools. That's something that James should be very, very proud of. Those kids are worth it, and their parents are worth it too. And that wouldn't be happening without James Milano either.
Just before you finish, Premier, most of the MPs and ministers announced their resignation at the end of last year. Is there any reason why these particular four ministers waited until today to announce their resignation?
It's a matter of their own choosing. It's a matter of their own decisions. And as I said before, I'm not here to be a spokesperson for them, but I'll share this with you. I've had numerous discussions with those ministers, and they have kind of been absolutely certain at one point, and they've been a bit doubting. They've wanted to, well, maybe I should stay, maybe I can, you know, maybe I will. But they've all, and that speaks to their character, the seriousness of which they've taken this choice. And in the end, they haven't made necessarily a choice just for themselves and their family. They've also made a choice for our state, because they don't want to do the job unless they've got all the energy and all the capacity that's required to do the job. And they've also, as James just very eloquently said, he got his opportunity because someone moved on, and now it's his time to move on to give someone else their chance. And whether it's, as I said, chairing a parliamentary committee, all the way through to being the, a minister, we've all essentially relied upon renewal to do the jobs we do now and to do jobs that we may do in the future. So it's a healthy thing. It's an important and a critical thing in many ways, and not something that I'm concerned about. Saddened to see good friends leave, but I'm not concerned about it because I know we've got the depth, the talent, the energy, the passion to do the work and to give Victorians a positive and optimistic plan that then they can choose to vote for or not. That'll be a matter for them at the end of this year.
And after the election, if re-elected, do you have the energy for another 4 years?
I do, but my view's always been, I serve at the pleasure of the community and of course my colleagues. But I said, Chanel, I've said this to you before, and it's not a line. It's true. I don't have to speak about last year, and it's not particularly easy to speak about last year. It was a terrible time in my life and the life of my family, and it could have been very different, very, very different. And I didn't get well to get out. I got well to get back to do the work, to finish what we've started. Not what I've started, what we've started. This has always been a team of amazing people. And there's change and refresh and renewal, and that's critically important to any team, particularly if it's going to be the best team that it can be. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.